While preparing for this shoot, I was surprised to learn that tennis has been developing in Kazakhstan for at least 100 years. However, recent years Kazakhstan is making a loud statement on the most prestigious international tournaments and is confidently climbing in global rankings in terms of tennis development and support. More and more adults in Kazakhstan are taking up tennis themselves and enrolling their children in the sport. As a result, the number of tennis centers across the country is also increasing. Today I've decided to introduce you to one of these centers. It's located in Almaty and has a unique feature. It's the oldest, or if you will, the very first tennis center in Kazakhstan. It has been operating since the early 1960s. My name is Madi Fazl, and today on Sporting Marvels I want to talk to you about the development of tennis in Kazakhstan.
Tennis is a sport that captivates with its elegance and even a certain nobility, if you will. It is highly aesthetic, free from aggression or roughness, where every movement is precise and refined. Instead, it's all about composed individuality, intense focus, and a quiet yet boundless endurance. Of course, one cannot overlook the appearance of professional tennis players. As a rule, they are harmoniously built with evenly developed muscles. Add to that the visually appealing attire, and you have a sport that is as graceful as it is demanding. Tennis has long upheld a refined and elegant dress code, understated in both design and color. The sport values tradition over provocation, and the tennis world isn't particularly fond of fashion experiments. Even the legendary Serena Williams, known for her bold style choices, has occasionally faced disapproval from the Global Tennis Federation. Some see this as excessive conservatism, while others view it as a commitment to preserving the sport's well-established image, one of grace, precision, and timeless aesthetics. And just how long has this image been shaping the sport? Most sources agree that the first official tennis tournament took place in the warm July days of 1877 in the English town of Wimbledon. More than a century later, this name still carries immense significance, making the hearts of tennis players around the world race with anticipation. And for Kazakhstan, Wimbledon now holds a particularly special place in history. Not long ago, the tournament's prestigious list of champions welcomed a new name, a remarkable and talented Yelena Rybakina. The year 2022 was a remarkable one for Kazakhstan's tennis. Beyond Yelena Rybakina's Wimbledon triumph, Anna Danilina secured 7 tournament victories, while young Aruzhan Sagandikova claimed her first professional title. Kazakhstan's male players also delivered outstanding performances, with the country's top-ranked player Alexander Bublik making his mark. And if we were to start listing the junior successes, the list would be endless. Yes, 2022 was a particularly rewarding year for Kazakhstan's tennis, but more importantly, it was a reflection of the sport's rapid and powerful growth in our country. If we look at the international stage today and the performances of our players, it is important to understand one thing. This level of success has been achieved in just 15 years. That's not a long time at all. At any tournament, wherever you go, or even if you check the scores on SofaScore, you're bound to see Kazakhstan's flag. I recently returned from Turkey, where our U16 boys team, made up entirely of homegrown talents, achieved an incredible result. Not only did they make it through the highly competitive qualifying rounds, defeating Australia in a decisive match for a main draw spot, but they also outperformed many nations with deep-rooted tennis traditions. Countries that, despite their history in the sport, didn't make it to the main tournament. And where did Kazakhstan finish? 5th in the world. That's an outstanding achievement for our country and a testament to how far Kazakhstan's tennis has come. For a long time, the idea of Kazakhstan harboring serious ambitions in professional tennis seemed far-fetched, and yet, in some form or another, the sport has always been a part of our country's history. The earliest newspaper mentions of tennis in Kazakhstan date back exactly a century. By the 1930s, a tournament had even been organized, but then came the wartime 1940s, bringing everything to a standstill. It wasn't until the 1950s that a more structured approach to tennis development began to take root in Soviet Kazakhstan. Scattered across the republic, the first courts started appearing, and for the first time, athletes were being trained specifically as tennis players. Until then, tennis had been more of a side pursuit, something indulged in by professional athletes from entirely different sports. But little by little, the landscape began to shift. Dedicated tennis clubs started to emerge across the country, including this one. Founded in 1961, this was the first ever tennis center in Kazakhstan. The man entrusted with building its foundation was coach Augustin Welts, whose vision and expertise laid the groundwork for a truly formidable tennis school. Under his leadership, this institution produced a generation of outstanding athletes. Some graced the courts of Wimbledon, others battled in Grand Slam tournaments. Vadim Schuster is a world-renowned coach with an illustrious sporting past. Originally from Moldova, he arrived in Kazakhstan at the invitation of the National Federation to take up a coaching role. Today, he leads the country's junior national team and has, for several years, been at the helm of the coaching division at this very tennis club. This is one of the most advanced tennis centers in the country, built to meet the highest international standards. Naturally, its current appearance bears little resemblance to what it was in 1961. The facility has expanded significantly. More courts, better infrastructure, and state-of-the-art amenities now define the space. Yet, the moment Vadim set foot here, he experienced an uncanny sense of déjà vu. Perhaps it was the coach's instinctive memory at play, triggered by the location itself. After all, this historic tennis sanctuary was built within the lush, green heart of the city's Central Park. I once played a tournament here. I barely remembered the place. I was only 15 at the time. But then, by pure chance, I started looking around, asking questions, and suddenly realized these were the very courts where I had competed as a teenager. And now, years later, I stand here as the club's sports director. Back then, these were the old courts. 4 clay courts built with sand sourced from Kapshagai, all put together through sheer dedication and effort. This club, without a doubt, has deep-rooted traditions. Later, during the Soviet era, it even passed into private hands, eventually falling into a state of neglect. But today, it has risen from those years of decline to become, without question, a true pride of Kazakhstan. When representatives from Roland Garros visited, they were genuinely impressed with the courts. The moment they stepped onto the surface, one of them couldn't help but exclaim, "Roland Garros," a testament to just how well-crafted and visually stunning this facility has become. And in the grander picture, the growth of tennis in Kazakhstan has been nothing short of extraordinary. It's no coincidence that many refer to it as a phenomenon, because that's exactly what it is. Today, Kazakhstan boasts several dozen tennis centers across the country, and they are all in high demand as more and more people are developing a deep appreciation for the sport. However, this growing enthusiasm also exposes a pressing challenge. Very few of these centers are equipped to operate year-round. Converting an outdoor court for winter use requires substantial investment. Specialized air-supported structures resembling giant canopy roofs are needed to cover the courts. But installing the dome is just the beginning. It then requires precise ventilation, efficient heating, and ongoing maintenance. Not every tennis center can afford such an upgrade. Take this club, for example. It boasts more than 10 courts, yet only 4 of them are indoor. This can rightfully be called a top-tier facility, one of the few of its kind in the world. It is an exceptionally high-end venue designed to meet the most demanding professional standards. Everything from heating to lighting has been meticulously engineered to create the ideal playing environment. Lighting, in particular, is a critical factor in tennis. The floodlights are positioned at precisely the right angles to prevent glare. Only the highest quality lamps have been used, providing natural and consistent illumination across the court. Another crucial element is the court surface. Tennis courts can feature hard, grass, or clay surfaces. Hard courts are typically used for indoor facilities, while clay courts are the most common choice for outdoor play. Of course, the clay used in professional tennis isn't simply the natural ground on which the court is built. It follows strict international standards, a precise blend of crushed brick, clay, sand, stone, and in some cases, even fine plastic granules. At this club, the clay for the outdoor courts is imported directly from Europe. All of this is removed in the summer. I want to emphasize once again, these air-supported structures are far from simple installations. Here the dome is kept in excellent condition, both visually and functionally. Take a look at these two courts. Pay close attention to the quality of the clay. Notice its rich, deep red color, its immaculate condition. This is what a world-class clay court should look like. This club welcomes players of all ages. The oldest local tennis enthusiast is 90 years old, while the youngest are just approaching their 4th birthday. For the senior players, it's all about passion and staying active. No grand ambitions for professional titles, but for the youngest ones, or rather their parents, training here comes with a long-term vision, the dream of making it to the big league. Here, young players receive exceptional attention. Their training schedules are prioritized, and the club's core coaching staff is dedicated to their development. It's no coincidence. Kazakhstan's National Tennis Federation keeps a close watch on clubs like this, always on the lookout for the country's next rising stars.
Raising a champion in tennis is always a long-term commitment. Training typically begins at the age of 4 or 5. By the time a child turns 10, they should have completed several levels of preparation. For children's training, smaller courts, nets and rackets are used. Interestingly, the ball they use is slightly larger than the standard size. After the age of 10, the training becomes more advanced and can be described as professional level preparation. Kazakhstan's Tennis Federation closely monitors young talents and takes the most gifted ones under its wing.
A children's tennis ball differs not only in size but also in color. In fact, the color of the ball in a young player's hands serves as an indicator of their training stage. Each color corresponds to a specific level. Continuing with the topic of children's tennis, let's talk about training balls. Young players start with baby tennis, a stage where red balls are introduced sparingly. The idea is to familiarize children with the sport while focusing primarily on agility, coordination, attention, and overall motor skills. It's not just about hitting the ball, it's about developing the foundation for future play. Once they are ready, they transition to the red ball, the first real tennis ball in their training journey. This ball is used not only for practice, but also for early-stage competitions. Notice how soft it is and how gently it bounces. From there, they progress to the orange ball, slightly different and a bit firmer. It presents a greater challenge requiring more precision. Yet it still maintains a controlled flight, making it manageable for young players. The next step is the green ball, which is firmer still, though not as fast or demanding as the standard yellow ball used in professional tennis.
I don't rely too much on professional terminology on coaching young players. Instead, I draw from everyday life, using familiar movements to build associations. For example, when teaching a forehand or backhand, I explain it in a way they can easily grasp, like picking up a small bucket or pouring out a water. It's a simple analogy, but it gives them a basic feel for the motion. Of course, this isn't a textbook perfect technique, but for kids just starting out, it's an effective foundation. I'm talking about 5- and 6-year-olds who are still figuring out what tennis is.
Currently, around 500 children under the age of 10 train at this club. While the approach is playful and encouraging, coaches introduce them early on to the structure and demands of professional sports. The first and most important lesson they learn is discipline, committing to full effort training, embracing challenges, and continuously testing their abilities in matches against their peers.
Many of my young players regularly compete in tournaments, earning top spots in the city and national competitions. Right now, their main focus is on the master tournaments, which are part of the ranking system. The more they play, the better they understand the game, and the more familiar they become with their opponents. This is where psychology of junior tennis comes into play. If a child loses to the same opponent multiple times, they often develop a fear of facing them again. The mental battle begins long before they even step into the court. I had a young player who kept losing to the same girl, and over the time she convinced herself that defeat was inevitable. "I'm going to lose," she would say, even before the match started. That's why working on the mental aspect is just as important as physical training. Coaches need to help children build confidence and resilience, but parents also play a key role. It's essential that they work together with a coach.
Today, around 30,000 children in Kazakhstan are engaged in tennis. Of course, not all of them will receive financial support from the National Tennis Federation. Some will have to pursue their dreams independently, and that pursuit will likely come at a high cost. After all, professional tennis is one of the most demanding and resource-intensive sports. However, when it comes to amateur tennis, experts often challenge the stereotype that it is an excessively expensive sport. I want to emphasize once again, this common perception that tennis is an expensive sport is simply not true. That's a misconception. Kazakhstan now has a large number of tennis centers, and the cost of training is absolutely reasonable. Plus, tennis is a sport for all ages. You can start at any time, whether you're a child or an adult. Here at the club, we have a variety of programs for adults, and we even introduce beginners to the game using red balls, part of the progressive color-coded system. These balls are slightly softer and less pressurized, making it much easier for newcomers to develop their skills quickly.
Regarding the cost of tennis, yes, it is undoubtedly considered one of the most prestigious and even elite and expensive sports. But trust me, expenses can be easily optimized, especially if you are just an amateur and not aiming for professional heights. For example, you can choose simpler equipment and opt for group training sessions instead of individual ones. By the way, amateur tennis in Kazakhstan is currently experiencing an incredible boom. Perhaps the only sport growing even faster in popularity is running. In fact, this very center hosts several amateur tennis tournaments. Most of them take place on weekends, because during the weekdays, the participants go about their regular lives.
Amateur tennis in Kazakhstan has grown into more than just a hobby. It has become a way of life, not only for individuals, but for entire families, groups of friends, and even colleagues. The driving forces behind this phenomenon can be traced to two key factors: the effective work of the National Tennis Federation and the inspiring achievements of Kazakhstan's top players.
Tennis centers like this are becoming increasingly common across Kazakhstan, while most of them are fee-based, it's clear that the commercial aspect is rarely the priority. The centers are founded by people with a deep passion for the development of tennis, and their primary goal is to create opportunities for young players. After all, who knows, a young prodigy might emerge, and the skilled coach at these centers will undoubtedly recognize their potential and help them embark on a professional path. At the same time, the centers place great emphasis on supporting the growth of amateur tennis for adults. As I mentioned earlier, more and more adults in Kazakhstan are choosing to take up tennis seriously in their free time. In fact, I think I've just decided to join their ranks myself. I'm Madi Fazl, and today on Sporting Marvels I found myself unexpectedly inspired to pick up a tennis racket and start playing. Why not? For now, though, it's time to say goodbye. See you next time.